Hello, I'm ANorman, and this is my project I decided to call it Imprint, and it investigates design's impact on identity. And because it's a project based about design, I had to design a little logo for it. And I picked Imprint as the name of my project for three main reasons. One, it kind of has the paw print and it reflects who I am as a Grecian bulldog. Two, imprinting is actually what is called in the process of screen printing, when you push the ink through the emulsion. So that's another imprint. And finally, an imprint can also be a legacy. So my project really started here. I was walking along the beach with my sister, and we were sort of kind of creative and goofy sometimes, and we were tossing around an idea about cool t-shirt ideas, and we came up with Lemurica, which is a neologism consisting of lemur and murica. So it's like a patriotic lemur. That was our idea that we came up with. And that's really, I wanted to play more with that idea, so that's how I decided to do a design-based project for my senior project. And this is the original Lemurica on the left, in its early stages. And we sort of sat down at her dry erase board and kept tweaking back and forth, making the lemur design. And then we sharpened it in. And then the next step is pretty cool. I actually vectorized it, which means I scanned it and converted the rasterized image. So rasterized would be your JPEGs, PNGs, your standard images that lose quality when they're expanded or increased in size. And actually vectorizing it converts it to geometry. So it can be scaled to any size, converted, and it doesn't lose quality. So that's pretty neat. And that brought me to my internship at TSI Promotional, which is a small business in Ashland. I met everyone there within the first 5 minutes of being there, so that was really cool. And they set me up at this little station, got me going on Adobe Illustrator. And they don't primarily use Illustrator, so that was something a little bit different for them. They use another program called Coral, but they were starting to use Illustrator, and they wanted me to mess around with that because I guess I'm a younger brain, and I've had like experience with Photoshop and other Adobe projects. So, but they did know a little bit about it. So we were kind of both figuring it out together as we went along, which was funny. But yeah, I'll come back to that. Tom was he's one of the designers there. Mr. Mays was my main mentor, but he was sort of in his office working on some other things. He was an awesome mentor. He was there for a lot of guidance, but Tom was the main guy who helped me with the actual design. And Meredith as well was another designer there. They're the two designers at TSI. So on the left is my drawing where I took my vector and started coloring it and putting the text in and tweaking that. And in the center is the Pantone matching system where it's all these colors laid out. And so the colors correspond with the inks that they have. And I had to pick through the colors to pick the right ink and figure out how they could mix the inks to get the colors I wanted. So I picked out the colors I wanted, and they showed me the different inks. So that was neat. The actual process of the printing the screens and burning the screens was wild because it really made me think in ways I hadn't thought before. And something that was very specific I wasn't aware of, there are many different kinds of blacks. And it had to be, the black is black, it had to be red, green, blue, 0, 0, 0, so no color at all. And the reason is because if it's not 100% black, when they burn the screens, they have these emulsions, and it's like a stencil that the ink pushes through. And if it's not perfectly black, it won't burn right. And then when the ink comes through, it'll be blurry on the actual shirt. So it has to be very black. And when it printed out the first time, I noticed that it wasn't perfectly black. And I said something, I said, hey, I don't think this is right. And they're like, yeah, you're absolutely right. So we had to go back in the program and convert it from CMYK to RGB. So there's a lot of different things. So those are the different color formats, and we had to find the right one. And we were learning Illustrator together as we went along. So there's also the X down there, and the information up there is part of the layout. And they file lots of different films. So they have this whole like closet full of films, and that way they can go back and pull out my film if I ever want to run more shirts. So, and that's where it's actually burned. they paint the screen with the emulsion, and then they put it in this spray area where they spray off the, they take this high pressure hose and it sprays away the stencil, and it comes out pretty cool. And there's another picture of it right there. So while I was waiting for the shirts to come in, they gave me a side project, which was, I actually got to work with a client, and she sent in an email of what she wanted. And it's just a little t-shirt for a spring break graduation cruise. And I took on that project. It didn't take me very long, but it was neat because they showed me their font library and their clip art and everything. And I vectorized it and had this goofy idea to put a graduation cap on a cruise ship. She had an idea in mind, but I thought this might be neat too. So I tried that out and found this font, and it's wavy, and I think it sort of blends pretty well with the waves and everything. So, and then they sent it to her, and Tom emailed me a couple weeks later saying she really digs it, and that felt good. So I was excited about that. And she said, or Tom told me, he said, when are you going to come back and make us confused again? So, this is the pile of shirts. TSI generously donated 60 shirts for me to print and sell. And all of the money from that is being donated to help childhood cancer. TSI works closely with Restrong, which is a foundation that helps alleviate the financial burden associated with childhood cancer. So that was really, really awesome. Here's me printing my first shirt, and that I found takes a little bit of skill, actually. So you have to put the ink on. You can't put too much, too little. So that's pretty precise. And then you push it through the film. And if you push too hard, too much ink will come through, and the shirt will come out blurred. And if it's not enough, it's not going to be solid and colorful like it should be. So I printed a couple. Finally, I sort of got the hang of it. But then they let their screen printer person take care of the rest, because there's a huge stack, and they can take a lot of time, especially if you move slowly like me. And after that, it goes onto a conveyor belt through a dryer, and it's thrown into a hamper with all the other shirts, and then folded, boxed, and ready to go. So that's really awesome. I'll show you a shirt right here. This is the Limerick shirt, and it's upside down. On the front, it has this little top left badge thing that says Limerica, and on the back, "Strut your stripes" is the Limerica slogan. So it's red, white, and blue, stars and stripes. So patriotic things. And again, they're $15. I still have a box of them in my car. But they've been pretty popular. Some days I'll come to school and I'll see 3 or 4 of them around school, which is really awesome. So that's a good feeling to see people actually wearing my shirts and excited about them. One thing I found in my research was color can increase. It makes an impression that's 39% more memorable. And going into interviewing my mentors and everything, we kind of butted heads about the importance of color. So that was kind of different. And that's what came back to my burning question: what is the importance of identity in design, and how does design impact identity? And I found out, I really saw firsthand how different designers have different things that are important to them in their designs. And I found, for me, color is more important. But when I was talking to Tom and Meredith, they said color is the least important. For them, it's big, solid lines and really distinct shapes. And this is the actual design. And one thing I thought, you'll see it's colorful. I like colors, obviously. And the other thing in my research, I found there's something called the Gestalt effect, which is a psychological thing where even when it isn't the shapes, there's like missing pieces, your brain fills it in. And when you make that connection, it's a semantic connection, and it makes it more memorable. So the World Wildlife Fund Panda Bear is a good example of that. It's very simple, but your brain fills in the missing parts of it. And another thing I found that was super important is motion in imagery. So I looked at some studies that show how they just tweaked these logos a little bit, so that one was Newton's cradle and they were all down, and the other one was out. And the one where it was out and in motion, it stuck with people a lot more. So the lemur has 1 foot forward, it's moving and it's dynamic, so that helps people connect more with it. And also talking to Tom and Meredith, I asked them questions about what makes you different as a designer. So that was pretty cool to see how they're very different. Now I learned about that, how I'm different. But a little nugget of advice for rising leader seniors would be definitely take time to come up with good questions for your mentors, because they're knowledgeable, this is what they do. And when you're taking time out of their day to ask them questions, they should really be good questions, and then you'll get really good answers most of the time, and that'll help you in your research. So this is my community service part 2. Besides selling the shirts, I also tried to figure out how I could get curbside recycling in my neighborhood. And I printed out these flyers. I designed and printed these flyers. So my community service mentor for this was the Go16 County Environmental Planner, Ms. Lee Dunn. And first, I want to preface my community service with a short story from earlier on this week. My mom sent me to the grocery store with a little list of things to pick up. And one of the things on the list was sweet onion. So I was in the produce section looking for a sweet onion, and I couldn't find them. I saw yellow onions, white onions, red onions, but no sweet onions. They had bags of sweet onions, but she just wanted just one sweet onion. So I tracked down the produce manager, and so he said, "Oh yeah, I guess we just have the bags of sweet onions." And I'm like, "Okay, thank you." And so I called my mom back. He's like, "I'll just get a red onion." So then I go to get a red onion, and then I see all of the sweet onions right there individually after the produce manager had just looked and said, "Oh yeah, we don't have any in stock." So back to this. Just keep that in the back of your head. It seems irrelevant, but it's not. So for my community service, I went around, I got in touch with Ms. Lee Dunn, the Go16 Environmental Planner, and we sat down and talked about, this was earlier on in the spring, and we talked about how I could get curbside recycling in the neighborhood. And she's like, "Well, we need a representative to go around and gauge the interest of the people in your neighborhood and see how many people might be on board with having this curbside recycling. And if everyone's on board, you can split the $1,025 fee for your neighborhood, and it'll be about $25 per person," which I'm like, okay, that's pretty reasonable. So I went around, talked to everyone, and a lot of people were super excited about it. I saw a man he was pedaling some poodles around. He had them hooked behind his bike they were all in a stroller, so I talked to him, he was pedaling around, and then I talked to a landscaper who was super excited about this. He's like, definitely on board with this. We really should have recycling in our neighborhood. I don't know why we don't. And then I talked to someone who had actually already gotten in touch with Ms. Lee Dunn and was told we need a representative to go around and talk to everybody, and she wasn't in a position to do that. So she was really excited about things. And it was really cool to connect with and meet my neighbors that I've never talked to before. But then later on, I got some contracts in the mail and everything, and I thought just gauging the interest, I thought that was the step I needed to take, and the county would take care of the rest. But no, I found out that I would need to go around and actually collect the money from everybody. And some people might be out of town, and the deadline was April 30th. And I'm like, I don't know how that's going to work out. So I was looking to get back in touch with the county and figure out if something could be worked out about that, if they could take $1,025 out of the budget and maybe dedicate it to the recycling, because we pay for sewage, but we don't get it. So anyway, I thought maybe we could work something out. So now I'm going to come back to the onion story, the moment you've all been waiting for. This actually, I was looking for someone to talk to about how we could work something out. And I came to the Virginia Waste Management page, and they're actually the recycling service. And it said, like, put in your address, and we'll tell you when your pickup day is. So I was like, okay. And I did that, and it's like your pickup day is Friday. And I'm like, why do we have a pickup day if we don't have recycling? So I called them, and they're like, oh yeah, your pickup day is Friday. We're sending you your stickers in your calendar now. And I was just like, I was dumbfounded. I was like, so we've had recycling this whole time and the Goochland environmental planner. So that's the onion thing, sort of. I feel like she's like the produce manager. But yeah, so right now I'm sort of working on letting my neighbors know how to get recycling, and we will have recycling. So that was crazy, but next year I plan to join the tribe and study computer science with a minor in Arabic. That's the plan. My advice for future Blue Ridge seniors, besides coming up with really good interview questions, definitely manage your time wisely. Deadlines are closer than they appear. And I know sometimes in class, like it's like a relaxed atmosphere. You chill, you want to work on other homework and stuff. But don't get too caught up in that, because all these deadlines are coming like a freight train. So I would recommend coming up with your own deadlines and keeping track of what you got going on. So definitely manage your time wisely. Thank you. Any questions?
So one of the things we've talked about with Blue Ridge is getting more intentional about putting design into the program. So I was really, I like hearing a lot about what you were talking about, and being intentional about design. So you've been through the whole curriculum. What kind of thoughts or suggestions would you have for us about how we might put more design and be more intentional about putting design into our curriculum?
I would definitely recommend using like up-to-date programs. Like Adobe Illustrator is probably cutting edge right now, so I wouldn't use something like Corel or something maybe not as up-to-date. And then, I don't know, I think really design is something that fosters a lot of creativity, but also having certain projects to focus on. So that's what sort of made me decide maybe design's not for me, because in my interview they were talking a lot about how these clients can be really stubborn and they don't always agree with, like, I don't know, so they don't have that creative flexibility that they should have. So I think have certain projects to focus on and to guide you, but also still have room to be creative with those projects.
What other methods are there for printing someone's shirt besides what you did, like the pin down on your lemur, for example? Like, how does that work?
So there's, in addition to screen printing,
yeah,
there's also direct-to-garment printing, which is where it's a certain kind of ink, and there's fancy printers. They're super, super expensive, but they're cool. It's called sublimation, which is where it goes from a gas to a solid. It's liquid, and it just goes onto the shirt.
That's pretty cool.
And that's pretty cool. And then also there's stitching and microfibers and stuff. So, Dr. Guy?
Your design looks really impressive. Is there a designer ads that we see on TV or in magazines right now that you admire in terms of the creativity and how it strikes you?
I would say I really look for simplicity. So when you see Apple, they have black backgrounds and white logos, and the lines are really clean and simple, and that's kind of what I look for in designs.
Is there any significance behind the 3 stars on your logo versus
it's
5
just,
or 10?
It just fit well.
Yeah.
Mine is more of a comment, but I want to thank you for working with a company that does Reese Strong, because Reese is my niece.
Really?